If you are a beginner struggling with creating good quality Spring Boot code, this video is for you. Today, I will share with you the biggest beginner mistakes that I saw, and one time I was also guilty of them in my Spring Boot code. And I will try my best to help you to avoid them. If you are interested, watch this video till the end. If you look at the most people's code, it looks like it was written before Java 8. And let me remind you that we are almost at version 25. We as Spring Boot developers should make the use of the newest Java features and make use of the modern patterns. The whole programming world goes into the direction of immutability, so favoring objects and variables that don't change its state after creation, which allows for easier debugging and more bug-free code. Java follows this trend, and we got features like, for example, records. We also have the final keyword, and I made a full guide on all of the use cases of the final keyword. You can watch this after this video. You should also use the var keyword whenever it's possible to let the compiler infer the type for you instead of you having to do it every time. Since Java 8, we also have the Stream API for working with collections, so you should always favor it over, for example, like traditional loops like for, while, do while, and so on, when you work with collections. I'm also planning to doing a full guide for streams, so you can subscribe to not miss it. Another mistake is to generating response types, for example, response entity and the wildcard, or something like list, map, string, object in your controllers. This is a huge red flag because that often means that the developer doesn't understand the purpose of domain types or Spring exception handling. When you return generic types, you essentially are sending a mystery box to the client that forces them to cast values manually. For example, like this string, repo, get name, for example. Casting is a major code red flag and should be always avoided in production-ready enterprise-level applications. It makes your code fragile and hard to read. So how do we fix this? Always use concrete business domain types in your applications. For example, instead of using map string object, you use something like list repository. And for handling errors, never use try catch in your controllers, but let the Spring powerful exception handling features do the work for you. For example, throw a custom exceptions and then like map them in the config to specific HTTP response codes. This will keep your controllers clean and focused on their main job. Okay, so what are the common testing mistakes? A lot of developers use old or incorrect methods to set up integration test. You should always do it like this. So add Spring Boot test, then set web environment to random port, and use the auto configure web test client configuration. Then you use the web test client for your API, and never use new keyword to create new web test client. Always use the Spring provided builder, because it's a build that is managed by Spring, so you don't have to create new instance of it. Another mistake is to relying on external web services when writing your tests. Your test should never connect to any external service. You should use WireMock to fake external HTTP servers. And basically, WireMock will always return the set JSON response for that your application can use, because failing like external servers should never impact your tests. And also when you are, for example, connecting to external API, there could be like, for example, some limits. For example, there are some like tokens that you can use, and you would waste them you would waste them just every time you run your tests. Next is to using the correct tool for the job. So mockMVC is used for fast unit test on a single controller, and web test client is used for integration tests. Okay, so what are the client-side HTTP mistakes, like the most common ones? For example, guys, don't use the REST template anymore, please. We right now have the new version, the REST client for like years now, I think, and web client. REST client is basically a replacement for the REST template. It's also a blocking client, and for more advanced use cases, use the web client because it's not blocking, but it's much more difficult to use. So uh, for simple cases, use the REST client. Also, don't manually create REST client. Inject it using the REST client builder. And the next mistake is accepting generic data. Basically, receiving a raw string or object from a service is a major red flag. It also makes your code fragile and unreliable. Always return a concrete Java object, a class, or record from your client. Spring, Spring will automatically handle converting to JSON into a real object for you. It's much safer and cleaner. Also, don't hide bad data. Null or malformed response for some external API should be dealt with. You can, for example, make something like that. You get a null and you return an empty list instead of raising an exception. Null or malformed response should be always dealt with, not ignored. And if you want to learn more about Java and Spring Boot ecosystems, I invite you to my private community. Check out the top link in the description. Here is the next video about Java final keyword that I think you should watch if you want to learn more about the immutability patterns in Java. Until the next time, create some amazing applications.